I would like to take this opportunity to thank already all those that accepted our invitation, thus greatly enriching the program of the conference. You're all, of course, aware of the Permanent Council decision number 1297 on the agenda and organizational modality of 2018 ASSC. Let me, nevertheless, seize the opportunity to remind all of you that we are aiming at an interactive and free-flowing discussion. Therefore, formal statements and interventions should be as concise as possible and should not exceed 5 minutes in length. I would also like to inform you that the opening and closing session are open to the media, while the working session are not. Without further ado, let me now introduce the first distinguished guest speaker. I am very pleased to welcome the Italian Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, the Honorable Guglielmo Picchi. Mr. Deputy Minister, since you are so familiar with the OSCE, there is actually no need to explain what your participation in this ASSC means to us and for you, and for me, sorry. It is a special honor to have you here today. Se posso dirlo in italiano.
And if I can say so in Italian, it is a personal pleasure to welcome you here. Honorable Picchi, Mr. Vice Minister.
Grazie.
Thank you very much. Secretary General, Vice Minister Grushko, Ambassador Mayr Harting, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is for me an honor to be here with you today representing the Italian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Enzo Moavero Milanesi, Chairman in Office of the OSCE. The OSCE is an organization which is especially dear to my heart, which I appreciate and which I know very well, having been a member for 10 years of its Parliamentary Assembly. And I have spent many years in this very hall at our winter meetings. The Annual Security Review Conference is the main event in the first dimension. It is an event of primary importance, which from year to year allows us to take stock of the situation, to acknowledge the progress made, as well as to recognize missed opportunities, deadlocks, and steps backwards in our common objective of building a safer and more secure Europe. The conference also provides us with an opportunity for frank, constructive, and substantive dialogue, as well as to analyze, beyond the crisis and crises underway, opportunities for greater international cooperation, so essential for us to face and to defeat together transnational threats. It is no coincidence that, as title of this important security event, we have chosen to recall our motto of the chairmanship: we believe in dialogue, understood as a constructive exchange and as an opportunity not to be wasted, especially in such a complex phase in international relations. The OSCE is the largest regional security organization, so we must take full advantage of all of its potential with a renewed sense of responsibility and of collective ownership. As you know, the Italian chairmanship has among its priorities the resolution of the crisis in Ukraine through the full application of the Minsk agreements, as well as support for the activities of the Special Monitoring Mission. Its observers must be able to work in conditions of safety and security. The reports from the OSCE mission are not encouraging. Civilian victims are on the increase, and the number of displaced persons and of refugees continue to grow. We also note an intensification of the hostilities and of violence caused by the deployment of heavy weaponry, which should have already been withdrawn. Also of concern are increasingly serious threats to the safety of OSCE observers and the attacks on their equipment, such as long-range drones, which are fundamental to ensure the safety and security of the mission. We need revitalized commitment in order to improve the situation in the field. We cannot ignore the appeal of the civilian population, which from both sides of the line of contact is asking to be able to return to live in peace. All parties must fully assume their responsibilities, beginning with full respect of the ceasefire and a strong relaunch of the political process to resolve the crisis within the Trilateral Contact Group and the Normandy format. In the same manner, we must intensify our efforts to resolve protracted conflicts. I am comforted by recent positive developments in the process in Transnistria, a process which Italy has actively supported, hosting in late May a new meeting in the 5+2 format, which concluded with the signing of the Rome Protocol. This document enshrines the commitment to finalize all of the aspects of the so-called 8-point package, that is the priorities that were determined last year. We continue to work for a peaceful solution to the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh through full support to the co-chairs of the Minsk Group. We support the Geneva International discussions for a solution to the conflict in Georgia, and we recognize the importance of a solution of the problem of internally displaced persons. Italy believes with conviction in the opportunities offered by the structured dialogue. This is a precious and unique exercise which has already provided important results, beginning with the recognized need to ensure that our exchanges take place on a more concrete and less ideological basis, and to face with renewed commitment the challenges to our collective security in the political military sphere, remaining firm in our principles and commitments. We cannot allow ourselves to be overcome by events, and we cannot allow the progressive erosion of the European security architecture without doing everything in our power to resolve the situation and return to transparency, trust, predictability in the political military sphere. We need to relaunch the logic of cooperative security and reestablish the full functioning of existing instruments, beginning with the Vienna document on confidence and security building measures, which must be modernized substantially, and with the Open Skies Treaty. Its operations have unfortunately been deadlocked for months. At the same time, we need to be able to look ahead and to identify the limits of existing instruments and to explore new solutions. An effective arms control regime which is functioning, which is in keeping with the times, is vital for us to be able to maintain and strengthen security in Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, Italy believes that the future of our organization will depend on a deepening of the cooperation with our partner countries and with other international organizations. I think specifically of the partners on the southern shore of the Mediterranean, with whom we are ready to hold a dialogue on the many common challenges that we face, including an orderly management of migratory flows. We face a global security challenge. We must be able to look beyond the confines of our organization to be able to handle threats and risks that are transnational, such as terrorism, cyber attacks, corruption, organized crime, illicit trafficking, trafficking in human beings. These are challenges that affect not only the quality of international relations, but also and especially the security and well-being of our societies. Italy is investing greatly in fighting against trafficking in cultural heritage, which is a threat to our identity and a source of financing for terrorism. We believe that the OSCE can do a tremendous amount together with other competent organizations to counter this threat. In conclusion, I'd like to say a few words on the negotiations on the scales of contribution, which the Italian chairmanship relaunched yesterday with the meeting held in Rome. I myself presided over that meeting. A positive result of the negotiations cannot be only a priority of the Italian chairmanship. It must also be the absolute priority for all participating states. If we are not able to renegotiate successfully these contribution scales, in fact, we may not be able to guarantee the organization the resources that it requires for its functioning. I thus appeal to your sense of responsibility, the sense of responsibility of all of us, and to your sensitivity in ensuring that your state will contribute constructively to the adoption of new scales of contribution during the meetings that we have planned from now to the end of the year. In this way, we can in fact strengthen the effectiveness of the OSCE as we all wish to do. We believe that in a world characterized by interdependent challenges, which are increasingly complex, the OSCE, with its principle of comprehensive security, can and must play a leading role in strengthening dialogue in an inclusive manner and in contributing to collective security. This is the topic of our conference, which opens today, and for which I wish all of you a welcome and wishes of good work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Molte grazie, caro Vice Ministro. Now I would like to give the floor to our OSCE Secretary General, Ambassador Thomas Greminger, for some introductory remarks. Dear Thomas, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, dear Alessandro. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, also from my side, welcome to the 2018 Annual Security Review Conference. We have come together at the moment when our security order is in an intense state of flux. Our rule-based system is being challenged on multiple fronts. Fear and prejudice are creating divisions within our societies and between states and regions. Relations among key stakeholders are being shaken up and reassessed. Trust has broken down. Tensions are rising. Rhetoric is becoming increasingly hostile, and the dynamics of confrontation continue to gain momentum. The risk of conflict is growing, including conflict triggered by accident or by misunderstanding. In this increasingly unpredictable and unstable security environment, skepticism about the value of multilateralism and international cooperation is also on the rise. Yet, we continue to face a host of challenges that demand cooperative approaches. In fact, multilateral cooperation is needed now more than ever. From peacefully resolving military conflicts to tackling global and transnational threats, we must work together. We have no other choice. So we should look for convergences of interests and areas for constructive engagement within the framework of our fundamental principles. The first step towards this kind of pragmatic cooperation is dialogue. Yet, the space for genuine dialogue is shrinking. This makes the OSCE's inclusive forum all the more important. Urgent actions are needed to reduce tensions and to prevent military incidents or accidents from spiraling out of control. OSCE participating states took an important step by initiating the structured dialogue. The constructive tone of this informal platform for discussions on politico-military matters has already yielded useful exchanges on threat perceptions, force postures, and military doctrines. I'm hopeful that the structured dialogue process could lead to agreement on military risk reduction measures and the reinvigoration of existing confidence and security building measures. Eventually, it might even revive interest in conventional arms control. Given the serious risk of confrontation in border areas, a number of practical, verifiable steps could be considered to ease tensions and show readiness to cooperate. These include enhancing measures on incident prevention and management, especially in the air and at sea. Self-restraint measures for military activities near borders. Voluntary notification of major exercises, especially SNAP exercises, and complementary regional CSBMs, such as information exchange and additional visits. We need trust-building steps like these. We also need more military-to-military dialogue and more opportunities like the ASRC and structured dialogue for interaction between the military and the diplomatic communities. With this in mind, and with the explicit backing of the chair of the structured dialogue, in September I will convene a Security Days expert roundtable in support of the structured dialogue to look at possible ways to prevent military incidents at sea and in the air. And I invite you to attend this closed-door discussion featuring leading experts from think tanks and academia. Ladies and gentlemen, the greatest obstacle to restoring trust and to rebuilding our shared security is the crisis in and around Ukraine. After more than 4 years of fighting, military logic prevails. The welfare of the people in the conflict zone seems to have dropped out of the cohesion. The human cost of the conflict in eastern Ukraine is devastating. The failure of the sides to respect the ceasefire or to withdraw heavy weapons, especially from populated areas, continues to result in civilian death and injuries. Access to basic necessities like water, food and medicine is severely curtailed for hundreds of thousands of people on both sides of the contact line. Meanwhile, the OSCEs, our civilian monitors, face increasing harassment, intimidation and physical threats. The sides need to fulfill their commitments to guarantee our monitors' safety and security and to grant them full and unhindered access throughout the conflict zone. They need to protect our monitors and stop targeting our UAVs. A new political impulse is urgently needed to break the deadlock and to get the parties to finally implement the Minsk agreements. So I'm encouraged that the Normandy 4 is re-engaging at high levels. If agreement should be reached on launching a peace operation, the OSCE is ready to cooperate with the UN. After more than 4 years on the ground, we have invaluable experience and knowledge, and we have proven our worth as impartial observer and as an honest broker. I'm convinced that achieving a peaceful settlement in Donbass is possible. But the responsibility for peace lies with the parties. And I urge all who have influence on the sides to press them harder to take real and to take substantial steps to end the conflict. Ultimately, achieving sustainable peace in eastern Ukraine hinges on political will. This is obviously also true for the protracted conflicts in our region. Deputy Minister Picchi just referred to it. The Transnistrian settlement process has shown that cooperation is possible and that it can lead to practical results, provided the international stakeholders pull together and the sides muster the political will to enable progress. So we must intensify our efforts to work together constructively in all the existing mediation formats, and including by bringing more women to the negotiation tables. The evidence is indisputable that the meaningful engagement of women in peace processes lead to more effective and sustainable outcomes. A failure to include women is a waste of resources and a missed opportunity to use all possible factors to achieve peace. The OSCE is striving to ensure that the Women, Peace and Security agenda is an integral part of our policies and initiatives rather than just an ad hoc element. We are also making a conscious effort to achieve gender parity in senior management, including in our field operations. But we cannot do this alone. You have a responsibility too. So I once again urge you, participating states, to put forward more female candidates for our top positions. Dear colleagues, I said earlier that we need to cooperate in areas where interests converge. This is the only effective way to find solutions to complex and transnational security challenges. Challenges like terrorism, violent extremism, organized crime, large movement of people, and climate change. However, let me be clear. Our basic principles cannot be sacrificed for the sake of finding common ground. Instead, our principles should underpin our efforts. In the current context, the general lack of trust means that we must rely on an incremental approach to cooperation. Small steps. While progress will be slow, and doubtless there will be setbacks, we will be moving in the right direction. The OSCE's pioneering cyber CBMs show how well an incremental approach can work. It is in every state's interest to cooperate to prevent the malicious use of information and communication technologies. And our 16 confidence-building measures, agreed by all 57 participating states, are designed to lower the risk of misperception and miscalculation connected to the use of ICTs by states. They have the potential to enhance transparency and predictability. Now we need to focus on implementation. Excellencies, UN Secretary General Guterres has called for a surge in diplomacy for peace, with particular focus on prevention and peace building. These are both areas where the OSCE has decades of experience and where we can make a significant contribution to the implementation of the Sustainable Development Agenda, and in particular to SDG 16 in our region. On the prevention side, we help countries increase their resilience to the root causes of conflict and instability. And in post-conflict settings, we focus on building sustainable peace. Our field presences, our institutions, they focus on long-term strategies to build capacities and to build institutions. They're tailored to local needs, they're grounded in local ownership, with key roles played by civil society, by women, and by youth. But the organization has to adapt. It has to adapt to the realities of the 21st century. We need to ensure that the OSCE remains fit for purpose and ready to seize opportunities for cooperation. A new regional dynamic in Central Asia and positive developments in the Western Balkans are creating openings where the OSCE can make a difference. We also have opportunities for intensified cooperation with our Mediterranean and with our Asian partners. And there is no doubt that the security of adjacent regions affect our own security. We will benefit from more strategic cooperation with our Mediterranean and Asian partners to address both common challenges and shared opportunities. For example, our efforts to support migration governance and to ensure that it complies with OSCE commitments to protect human rights strengthen both our security and that of our Mediterranean neighbors. Dear colleagues, if we want to be successful in preventing conflict and promoting sustainable peace, we need a vision of peace that is broadly shared. Comprehensive and cooperative security still offers the best prospect for a safer future for us all. So we need to restore a rule-based system of cooperative security. But to get there, we first need to return to a common understanding of the fundamental principles that uphold it. Despite different views on how we ended up in today's dangerously unstable security landscape, we clearly have a common interest in finding a way out. Throughout its history, the OSCE has been an instrument for stability. Our inclusive platform for dialogue and joint action remains a useful tool for reducing confrontation and for encouraging cooperation. It is our common responsibility to make full use of this potential to help build a safer and a more stable future for us all. But this requires you, the participating states, to recommit wholeheartedly to genuine dialogue and cooperation. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to our discussions this week.
Thank you, dear Thomas, dear Secretary General. Next speaker in our program is the address by Ambassador Rosemary Di Carlo, UN Under-Secretary General, who will join us via a video message. Ambassador Di Carlo has been appointed as new Under-Secretary General for Political Affairs last March only, hence we're extremely pleased that you should deliver this video message on the screen now.
Dear Secretary General Greminger, dear Ambassador Azzoni, ambassadors, delegates, I'm honored to address the annual Security Review Conference. I deeply appreciate our cooperation to prevent and resolve conflict, tackle climate change, promote sustainable development, and foster respect for human rights. I thank the Italian chairmanship in office for organizing this meeting and for its leadership of the OSCE. Allow me to convey my warm congratulations to Minister Mayr on assuming his new responsibilities. Colleagues, the United Nations Secretary General has articulated a broad vision of prevention. It is a vision focused on building and sustaining peaceful, equitable, and resilient societies. In such societies, conflict is much less likely to break out, and recovery is easier and quicker. This agenda requires the engagement of all pillars of the United Nations: peace and security, development, and human rights. It will involve deep and sustained partnerships with regional and sub-regional organizations around the world. And it will look at the whole range of challenges we face today, challenges that defy all borders. The OSCE and its participating states have a central role to play in this regard. These are challenging times, not only for Europe and Eurasia, but also for the entire world. The multilateral system is under unprecedented strain just when we need it most. In this context, the OSCE's conflict resolution and confidence-building mechanisms stand as palpable evidence of how we can come together to promote long-term stability and sustainable development. The structured dialogue process provides a unique and valuable platform in that respect. The United Nations stands ready to further deepen its cooperation with the OSCE and its participating states to these ends. I wish you fruitful discussions during the conference. I trust that our partnership will continue to flourish and produce tangible results for the people we all serve. Thank you very much.
Program is Ambassador Alexander Grushko, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation. It is indeed a great honor and a pleasure for me to welcome Ambassador Alexander Grushko to this 2018 Annual Security Review Conference. Your Excellency, Deputy Minister, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to express thanks to the Italian chairmanship of the Secretary General of the OSCE and to the Secretariat to thank them for this wonderful organization of the conference. We hope that this will give us an opportunity to discuss and set out the way to solve the problems that stand in the way of a sustainable system of indivisible security in the OSCE area. I agree with the assessments that have been provided by our esteemed Secretary General with regard to the situation in the OSCE area. Indeed, the situation in Europe and in the world as a whole continues to be in a phase of high turbulence. 30 years after the end of the Cold War, the world has become economically and politically multipolar. We have seen a high level of unpredictability amongst states and their unions. And the international law is put to the test. And as has recently been stated by the President of the Russian Federation, Mr. Putin, the rules have become, the rule has now become a game without rules. We have seen that states are facing transnational threats. Many of these have become the results of Western intervention, and the outcome of which is that the giant area around the periphery of the OSCE area have turned into a area of non-rule and non-law, and have turned into territories where we see all forms of terrorist and extreme terrorist groups having the reign. All of this trying to build aisles of security either around NATO or the European Union in today's situation will just not work. On many occasions, Russia suggested that we should agree on the rules of the game and together to fight common threats. 10 years ago, we proposed the idea of a European security treaty, but this remained without attention. When we started to explain our positions in the West, instead of an equal dialogue, they resorted to the tried and true tactic of interference in internal affairs, sanctions, and military containment. By the way, the state coup in Kiev that led to Crimea's self-determination and the civil war in Donbass are all very telling. It is very interesting how quickly and easily NATO returned to their original raison d'etre, which was so pithily expressed by its first Secretary General, Lord Ismay, to keep Russians out, Americans in. Well, I won't mention the third slogan. Today, NATO countries and the European Union are holding the architecture of security hostage to the crisis in Ukraine, one of the many conflicts in Europe. But sanctions that won't solve the conflict, nor will they build an architecture of security. I recall that after the NATO bombing of Yugoslavia, which changed the very paradigm of European security, it was possible to do constructive work in everyone's interest. The European Security Charter and the OSCE Adaptation Agreement were the outcomes of political will to cooperate together. Today, NATO countries and the European Union must answer the questions for themselves. How do they see an architecture of security? Divided one in opposition to Russia, or united one, working together with Russia hand in hand to face common challenges? Unfortunately, while the multilateral formats are used not to reestablish trust, but to put pressure on Russia, including by restricting dialogue. In these days, everyone and his brother talks about the need to de-escalate, to ensure that there is no dangerous military incidents, to prevent a wrong interpretation of the side's intentions. But how can anyone argue with this? But how do we achieve this when we have a deep freeze on military contacts and a rift of all other political and other channels of communication? The answer to this question is very obvious. The cooperation in areas of common interest has come to a freeze and a hold, and that means another potential source of enhancing trust and confidence are being unused. Demonization, unilateral sanctions, imposing the image of a foe of Russia, boost confrontation. Many use Russophobia as a driver of the European unity, which is being undermined due to objective reasons. The unprecedented propaganda campaign of a narrative against Russia has nothing in common with the real situation in my country, nor in our efforts in the international arena, nor with the aspirations of the Russian people. With regard to specific political steps, excuses are being used such as highly likely or the lack of any other absence of any plausible explanations. And this is being used to justify policies. There's no end in sight. Now, at the Technical Secretariat of the Organization Against Chemical and Biological Weapons are also being used as excuses, and the sovereign right of countries themselves to establish their own implementation of their commitments. In this Hague Organization, what is being done is undermining the prerogative of the Security Council of the United Nations. There's no reason to look at the world through the prism of geopolitical competition, and this also pertains to the Western Balkans.
We hear increasingly louder voices and note that this contradicts fundamental interests, and if we do not put an end to this, conflict can be irreversible. It is fully absurd to refer to the myth of the Russian military threat, but let us recall that the Russian military budget in 2018 was approximately $46 billion and will decrease. The NATO country's military budget is $1 trillion. That is more than half of military spending of all the countries in the world. In the U.S., it is more than $700 billion, and the European Union military budget will soon reach $300 billion. And if we are to look at the NATO rule of 2%, we see that the amount of the U.S. will reach $400 billion. And the question arises, why and for what reason, against what enemy or enemies? The United States has approximately 800 military bases outside of its territory and is implementing a project of a global anti-missile system with components in Poland and Romania. The alliance continues to absorb Eastern European space, forcing the implementation of the open doors policy, which only creates new dividing lines and increases instability. So the Russian military planners must consider all of these factors. Mr. Chairman, we support efforts to return to a normal, depoliticized conversation on security issues, including in the framework of the OSCE structured dialogue. We must restore cooperation on the whole range of new threats and challenges. In 2016-2018, Europe and North America were lashed by a wave of terrorist attacks. We will not forget the tragedies in Nice, London, Berlin, and Brussels. Terrorist acts are increasingly being committed by individuals who are returning from conflict areas, as well as by lone wolves who fall under the influence of terrorist propaganda. This shows that a priority, including in the OSCE, should be placed on combating the ideology of terror and the phenomenon of foreign terrorist fighters. Closely linked to terrorism is the issue of narcotics trafficking, the profits of which go to finance terrorist acts. The areas of narcotics cultivation in Afghanistan are growing. This is an OSCE partner. In 2017, they were a record 300,000 hectares. The health of citizens of our countries is threatened by synthetic and psychotropic substances which are spread through the internet. The OSCE must not ignore this problem. We are in favor of strengthening its potential in countering narcotics and are making our contribution through the OSCE project on the preparation of specialists from Afghanistan and Serbia. A serious common challenge is the issue of migration. Now, this issue is felt most intensely in the countries of Western Europe due to the flow of migrants from the southern Mediterranean. We are convinced that the OSCE is able to make its contribution in efforts to resolve the migration program, and this is not a duplication of effort. Distinguished colleagues, OSCE resources remain necessary in conflict resolution. I've already spoke about the civil war in eastern Ukraine. In 4 years' time, more than 10,000 people have been killed there, including 2,500 civilians, and the situation is worsening. Kiev is blocking implementation of the Minsk agreements, the only basis for settlement. Large steps backwards are represented by the Ukrainian laws on reintegration of the Donbass and on education. The launch of the Joint Forces operation is leading to an escalation into new victims. We hope that the OSCE efforts in the contact group and the work of the Special Monitoring Mission in the field will be able to foster the implementation of the Minsk agreements and the resolution of this internal conflict. We are concerned by the situation in Kosovo, where there is inter-ethnic tension. We note that Pristina is sabotaging the creation of the Union of Serbian Municipalities and interfering with the beginning of the work of courts on the crimes of the Kosovo Liberation Army. We are glad to note that in December of 2017, with the participation of the OSCE, it was possible to move forward in resolving the Transnistria conflict. We note the positive results of the first of the year's meetings in the 5+2 format in Rome and the efforts of the special representative of the Italian chairmanship, Franco Frattini. Now what's most important is to ensure implementation by the parties of the agreements reached. And unfortunately, the adoption on 22nd June of the provocational draft resolution in the UN General Assembly is a step backward. Remaining important on our agenda is the work of the co-chairs of the Minsk group of the OSCE in fostering a resolution of the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh. And we highly value the work of the Geneva International Discussions of the OSCE between Georgia, Abkhazia, and South Ossetia. It is absolutely necessary for us to fully use the platform for security cooperation of the OSCE, including the support it has received for the ensuring of dialogue between all organizations acting in the area of the OSCE and to continue integration progresses. The OSCE can also play its role here. It is now time, under the Italian chairmanship, for us to complexly examine the outreach of the OSCE and its mechanisms, the influence of factors outside our region on security in our region will only grow. Distinguished colleagues, let me conclude and once again emphasize the importance of restoring trust and moving towards a community of equal and indivisible security, which our leaders agreed on in the summit in Astana in 2010. This will help us to resolve conflicts and deal with common threats. I hope that today's conference will make a contribution in this effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And the next speaker in our program is Ambassador Thomas Mayr Harting, Managing Director for the European External Action Service. Welcome to you as well, Ambassador, to this Annual Security Review Conference, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. On behalf of the European Union and its member states, I would like to thank the Italian chairmanship and the OSCE Secretariat for organizing this year's annual review conference. We value this opportunity to review ongoing security challenges in the OSCE region in the spirit of the chairperson in office's motto of dialogue, ownership, and responsibility to foster security in the OSCE area. We are gathered in this hall while many of our countries are competing on the football field for the World Championship hosted by Russia. In football, as in all sports, there are rules, referees, and penalties for foul play. And Vice Minister Grushko has just referred to the concept of rules of the game. And therefore, I would also like to say that in this organization, here in this hall, as well as in the field, there are common principles and commitments that we have all agreed to and agreed to respect and abide by. These rules of the game, precisely, are the cornerstone of the OSCE. But this is the real world, and our actions have serious consequences. We are striving to preserve regional security and stability, an objective which is in all of our best interests. Today, we are still collectively confronted with many threats and challenges, attempts to change internationally recognized borders by force, destabilizing actions, conflict situations, including protracted conflicts, terrorism, and the nexus with organized crime, malicious cyber activity, as well as ongoing migratory flows. The OSCE provides a unique and valuable platform, a normative framework, and tools to address these threats and challenges together. Dialogue is an essential instrument to prevent conflict and strengthen our security. We gather here once again against the backdrop of a security in crisis in Europe caused by the illegal annexation of Crimea, which we do not recognize, and the destabilization of parts of eastern Ukraine. The crisis in and around Ukraine poses a challenge to the European security order and has demonstrated the dangerous consequences that follow when fundamental principles of the OSCE are violated. Europe can be peaceful and secure only if we adhere to our jointly agreed principles and commitments and act accordingly. Reconsolidating European security cannot be separated from concrete actions in relation to the crisis in and around Ukraine. Also in Georgia, 10 years after the war in 2008, we are still working for peace and for a true resolution of the conflict. In the context of the Transnistrian settlement process, it is true that we have recently witnessed some encouraging developments that must be followed up on, and I too would like to thank the chairmanship in office for its efforts in this field. The Nagorno-Karabakh conflict needs an early political settlement in accordance with the principles and norms of international law. Restoring respect for international law, building resilience, and adopting an integrative approach to conflict and crisis are among our European priorities. We highly value the structured dialogue, subject of a special session tomorrow, which we are ready to develop in accordance with the Hamburg Declaration. The informal working group on structured dialogue is a useful platform in this context. Also here, much will depend on concrete steps and political will. We once again emphasize the need to work towards creating an environment conducive to reinvigorating conventional arms control and CSBMs and to fully implement the existing commitments in the Pol Mil area. We support the focus put on risk reduction and de-escalation in 2018, and we are committed to increasing military transparency, predictability, and political stability in the OSCE area. We remain committed to the substantial modernization of the Vienna document, as well as the further development of conventional arms control, CSBMs, and other instruments in the politico-military area. Mr. Chairperson, there are areas within the OSCE where our ministers managed to find common ground, particularly on preventing and countering transnational threats, such as terrorism and malicious cyber activity. We should build on this consensus and take a similarly united stance on the protection of human rights and the role of civil society. Respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms is fundamental to our common security. Likewise, a free, open, peaceful, and secure cyberspace will help underpin global security and prosperity. The question how to preserve peace and strengthen security is as relevant to the OSCE as a whole as it is to the European Union and its citizens. The European project has brought peace and prosperity to millions of people. And by the way, because this was mentioned, the enlargement process of the European Union has the objective, the primary objective of extending this zone of peace and prosperity in Europe. It is not directed against anyone. However, today opinion polls show that security is the main concern of our citizens. Within the OSCE, we are also trying to meet this concern in a number of ways. For instance, over the past years, we have strengthened our common European security and defense. Within the EU and its wider neighborhood, we have also taken concrete steps to confront different but linked security challenges, including against trafficking, which I know is a priority for the Italian OSCE chairmanship. We provide support to consolidate the rule of law and security sector reform in fragile settings and conflict zones, and we advance the women, peace and security agenda. as peace and stability cannot be stimulated nor preserved without sustainable development. The EU's external action covering humanitarian aid, development, neighborhood and enlargement is supported by a budget of over 123 billion euros over the next 7 years. Clearly, no one can foster security alone. For that, you need teamwork. Guided by our global strategy, we continue to be committed to strengthening our common security by standing up for a rules-based global order through engagement with our partners within the framework of this organization, with our candidates for enlargement within the Eastern Partnership and with many others. We are deepening our partnerships, particularly with the United Nations, NATO, and of course with the OSCE, as evidenced by the exchange of letters, which was recently concluded by the Secretaries General of the OSCE, the European Commission, and the ES, and witnessed by High Representative Mogherini last Friday. The EU is ready to increase its already excellent cooperation with the OSCE. Mr. Chairperson, ladies and gentlemen, we need to invest in this organization and pursue a cooperational approach to tackling the crises around us. For that, we need not only dialogue and respect for OSCE principles and commitments, but also mandates, budgets, and timely agreements on dates and topics for our exchanges. We need civil society to actively and freely participate in our discussion, because at the end of the day, nobody wins from confrontation, but everybody loses, especially civilians. We need to assume our responsibilities by continuing to stand up for the OSCE and what it stands for. Let me conclude by underlining that if we want, we can strengthen security through dialogue and couple it with action. We all stand ready to gain from dialogue ownership and responsibility. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Mayr Harting, also for having reminded our motto, the motto of our nation, of our chairmanship. Before opening the floor for intervention by the delegation, which in view of the fact that we are a little late and this is the opening session, so we'll have 3 days of work, I strongly recommend you to be very, very, very brief. But before, I kindly ask the media representative to please leave the room. Thank you very much. Thank you.